Huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of CryptidClues Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today I'm going to be diving into some older Bigfoot Sasquatch accounts, kind of going back as far as the 1800s. Before we get into that, just a couple of plugs. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca. You can also find us on social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and also on our Patreon. You get ad-free exclusive early episodes available there. And you can also send us an email if you just want to say hi, have a story you want to share. CryptidClues@gmail.com. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into this. So I've heard accounts and other people kind of talk about older Bigfoot tales and everything like that. And me and Ruben even did an episode on the medieval Wildman, kind of going back really far about Bigfoot and those accounts. I wanted to kind of go back again, but not necessarily to medieval or anything like that, but around a few centuries, I'd say at least. And the 1800s seemed like a great time. This is when we're getting into newspaper clippings, and a lot of those clippings are saved, digitally stored on the web. And I did some research, and I found a couple of them that I just wanted to kind of share and condense just so that you could listen to them today. So, the first one that I found, and seems to be a relatively famous one, is in 1871. The newspaper was dated October 22nd. And it seems, again, like I mentioned, this is a very famous one for its Wildman sighting, which it's detailing, and possibly one of the earliest sightings to actually describe what we are aware of now as Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So, this is the I'm saying this right. The Antioch Ledger. And it kind of just goes in. I'm going to read this actual quote unquote part right here. Let's see if I can actually read through this. Cuillin, nowhere. The wild man of the mountains. Listed October 16th. Grayson, October 16th. I saw in your paper a short time since an item concerning the gorilla, which was said to have been seen in Crow Canyon, and shortly after in the mountains at the head of Orstimba Creek. That's a very tricky word to see. It's a very old newspaper. You sneered at the idea of there being any such entities in the hills. Sorry, not entities, critters. And were I not better informed, I should sneer too, or else conclude that one of your recent prospecting party had got lost in the wilderness and didn't have sense enough to find his way back to Terry's. Positively assure you that this gorilla or wild man, or whatever you choose to call it, is no myth. I know it exists. So this is a part that's kind of in relation to the ledger that actually dives into this. So in the ledger, this is an excerpt from it, and I quote, "It was in the image of man, but it could not have been human. I was never so benumbed with astonishment before. The creature, whatever it was, stood fully 5 feet high, and disproportionately broad and square at the shoulders, with arms of great length. The legs were very short, and the body long. The head was small compared with the rest of the creature, and appeared to be set upon his shoulders without a neck. The whole was covered with dark brown and cinnamon-colored hair, quite long on some parts, that on the head standing in a shock and growing down close to the eyes." End quote. I just am baffled by that, and it's showing. Okay, this is one of the earliest accounts that we have that's recorded in much more of a public setting. This isn't something noted in a biblical sense or anything along those lines, but this is something that was handed out to everyone in town. An actual account. There is another one here, and this is again a newspaper from Tennessee. This is 1871. It's another wild man story. So, dated July 1st. Again, this is crazy. It's over 140 years old. The Jackson. Oh gosh, some of these words are so hard to make out in some of this print. We learned that between Sobey and Cranesville, on what is called Piney and McNairy County, a strange and frightful being has been observed for several weeks. He is said to be 7 feet high and possessed a great muscular power. His eyes are unusually large and fiery red. His hair hangs entangled in matted mass of jet below his waist, and his beard wrenches below his middle. His entire body is covered with hair, and his whole aspect is most frightful. Oh my goodness, what is that word? He stuns oh my goodness, he shuns the sight of men? What is this word? Oh my goodness. He shuts the sight of men? I cannot make that out. But approaches with wild and horrid screams of delight every woman who is accompanied by a man. He sometimes, with great caution, approaches houses, and should he see a man, he runs away with astonishing swiftness, leaping the tallest fences with the ease of a deer, defying alike the pursuit of men and dogs. He has frightened several women by attempting to carry them off, as well by his horrid aspect, and the whole country around Sobey. County around Sobey is in consternation. The citizens are now scouring the woods and are determined either to capture or drive off the monster. So here we have something that sounds very familiar. This is kind of something that goes hand in hand with the fact that me and Ruben have talked about Bigfoot always creeping in, trying to abduct kids or abduct women. That was something notable about the wild man. It was always trying to abduct women, and there would be fights breaking out. A couple of other interesting things noted from this in the Vermont Chronicle, that it's checking in houses. That's something that a lot of people talk about, where their accounts involve banging on the walls and these things peering through windows, being very inquisitive. Terrifies the daylights out of me, but again, it's just something that is it's worth noting and mentioning, because this is a 140-year-old newspaper article that details this. This is important stuff because it's relevant today in the sightings that people experience and nowadays. The last thing I wanted to mention on this, the red eyes. This is something that keeps popping up when me and Ruben keep diving more into the cryptid area, or the red eyes. Usually there are other accounts where people talk about Bigfoot. It's like big black beady eyes, nothing too crazy about that. But then you get the red eye encounters, and this is where things seem to be a little bit more sinister. I'm not going to go full biblical in here or anything. It's usually Ruben's domain, but it seems like these things have much more of a, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, a demonic kind of approach to them, I guess you could say. Again, I'm not saying and instilling that's exactly what it is. It's all up to interpretation, but the negative aspect to these things is usually always associated and attributed to ones that have red eyes in some weird way. So again, I think that's very, very interesting to actually just pinpoint. It's such a very exclusive attribute to take note of too when you're dealing with this sighting. And it sounds like this isn't just one person that's observed this, but several, as this was something that's been going on for many weeks. They're able to hone in on its physique, color of the hair, its height, again, all these details. So it was obviously well replicated, these sightings that people are able to see and kind of back up with other people and kind of confirm, this is what I saw, this is the same as what you saw, and just kind of move forward with that. So much to the fact that the citizens were actually creating hunting parties, going out in the woods with the dogs, trying to get rid of this thing. But who knows what the result of that is. So I have another one here. This is the New York Times Weekly. It's dated October 22nd, 1879. This is a 135-year-old newspaper here. A wild man of the mountains, quote unquote. Much excitement prevails among the sportsmen of this vicinity over the story that a wild man was seen on Friday last by two young men while hunting in the mountains south of Williamstown. The young men described the creature as being about 5 feet high, resembling a man in form and movement, but covered all over with bright red hair and having a long straggling beard, and with very wild eyes. When first seen, the creature sprang from behind a rocky cliff and started for the woods nearby. When mistaking it for a bear or other wild animal, one of the men fired, and it is thought wounded it. So here we have a very interesting case where they're out hunting, and sure enough, it's the scenario where, okay, this thing, it's a bear, let's pop a shot on it and see what happens. Now, the guy was obviously very confident, because if it was a bear, you'd have to make sure that shot lands. I have seen bears in the flesh before. I know my dad he's a prominent hunter. He's gone out into the woods, and he's encountered a few before where he just doesn't move. And these things, these bears, they'll just pass by and keep to themselves. But you got to be very careful, because you got to make, if you do shoot one, you better damn well hope that it is a damn good shot. As sad as it is to put something that's so, a life down like that, a big bear, it's if it's a hunter and you make that mistake, it'll be the last thing you do. This guy obviously felt like he was in the position to do it. He definitely, I imagine, wasn't necessarily trigger happy. But there is the whole idea and kind of disclosure that some hunters have, where when they come face to face with some of these things, they don't shoot. It's mostly because, like, holy shit, is that a human? And it's this kind of wave of emotion, like, hey, I'm not a murderer, like, oh god, I can't shoot it, and like, what am I looking at? And there's a kind of a fine line where hunters are kind of, they don't shoot because they're hesitant, like, oh my god, is that a person? And then there's the hesitancy, like, that's not a person, but it looks like it. I can't shoot it because who knows what's gonna happen if I do? Could I be charged for manslaughter? Like, who knows, really? This guy obviously didn't get that. He just got the bear sense, and he ran with it, and he shot the bloody thing. But they couldn't confirm if it was actually fatal, just whether or not it wounded it, and that is it. But this is quite interesting, the retaliation that they had on something like this. Again, the information that was kind of stemming from this, they were able to get, in retrospect, some good information. 5 feet high, resembling a man, moved like a man, hair all over, bright red hair, mind you. Straggling beard, again, the mention of the beard again. And then it had a very calm eyes, wild eyes, but calm. So we have that kind of dynamic, but again, not red eyes. So we have two distinct accounts here from these 1800s, where some have red, some have just regular wild-looking eyes that are probably a little bit more human-like to a degree, but again, just fascinating. This is in the New York Times, and it is a Vermont wild man story. I have one more that I'm going to share with you guys today, but I'm just going to jump to a quick ad break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. So this one is jumping ahead 100 years into the future. I thought I would just kind of close out with something that's a little bit more modern here for you guys. So August 23rd, 1983. Weird mountain creature is reported by picnickers. It stood on two legs, silhouetted on the trail in the moonlight, and it was huge. I don't scare easily, but that scared me. So said Eric, 19 of 183 First Street, one of two young men who came to the Eagle office yesterday to report their sighting of a strange human-like creature Sunday night on October Mountain. Eric's companion was Frederick, 22 of 771 Tyler Street. They said the episode took place near the former Boy Scout camp Eagle, which is on Felton Lake in the town of Washington, and has been abandoned since 1970. They said they had been having a steak and chicken cookout with two friends. At about 10 p.m., Eric said they had heard noises in the woods. Around midnight, he and one of the others decided to investigate. He said when they were about 100 yards away from the cookout site, they spotted the creature, about 50 yards ahead of them on the trail, silhouetted in the moonlight. They rejoined the party, which ended about an hour later. Both said it was not a drinking party, that there was only one six-pack of beer among the four participants. Eric said he doesn't drink anyway. As the quartet was about to leave, the headlights of their car picked up the creature lurking behind some bushes, according to Eric and Frederick. They said it was erect on two legs and it was 6 to 7 feet tall. It was dark brown in color and had strange eyes that glowed. They said both were empathetic in saying it was not a bear. Frederick said he's hunted bears in Maine and was quite familiar with how they look. Eric said he got out of the car and began walking toward it, and it quickly disappeared. Whatever it was, he said, it didn't look like it was going to harm you. Frederick said he and one of the others returned to the scene yesterday at midday and caught a fleeting glimpse of the creature again. It moved extremely fast, he said. About all he really saw, he said, were arms moving in the woods and underbrush. He said he plans to return Thursday, just before dusk, and would stay most of the night, if necessary, trying to see the creature again. So here we have this very interesting account. 6 to 7 feet tall, hair color again, walking on two legs, and the eyes glowing. They didn't state if they were glowing red, but I can't imagine black beady eyes necessarily glowing or anything like that. I feel like this is my personal opinion. I feel like you could attribute this to being red eyes. But that remains to be seen, really. I mean, we don't really know for sure, but maybe I'll be able to find some kind of follow-up when I do a little bit more digging with Ruben on some more of these interesting newspaper articles. I was going to close it out there, but maybe I'll do one more. I'm gonna take you back to the 1800s here. Let's go to August 30th, 1895, Friday afternoon. The Connecticut Wildman that has divided honors with the sea serpent is a full-grown gorilla. John Hall runs a stage between Hero and Sandusfield, Massachusetts. While he was passing through Colebrook, a large animal crossed the highway on all fours and leaped a stone wall. Hall and his passengers at first thought it was the wild man. The animal, when the stage approached, stood erect. Hall drew a revolver. The beast did not stir. Hall stopped his horses and was getting a good aim at the brute when off it sped on 4 feet into the meadows, uttering awful cries. Mrs. Michonne and Miss Saddle Woodhouse of New York City, who are summoning in Colebrook, also encountered the animal while they were driving in Winstead. The creature, when they espied it in the meadow, was standing upright. They are positive that the wild man is the gorilla. They say that it has large white teeth, black hair, a muscular form, and is about 6.5 feet tall. It is thought the gorilla made its escape from some circus and has since made its home among the Litchfield Hills. It has been heard from in Norfolk, East Cannon, North Goshen, and Sandusfield, Mass. The gorilla spent last winter in the southwestern part of Norfolk. Charles Benson of that town saw it jump from a tree. The brute chased him into the house. A party of Norfolk people saw it enter a hole in the mountain last spring, and after closing the opening with huge chains, they went to bed. In the morning, they found the chains broken. John Williams of West Norfolk met the gorilla 3 years ago while he was returning home one night. The ground was covered with snow, and the footprints of the animal were traced into the mountains. A son of Richard Parson, a Sanesfield farmer, saw the gorilla steal one of his rabbits. Mrs. George Marvin of South Norfolk saw the gorilla robbing her hen roost one morning last winter. It became so hungry that nearly every farmer in the outskirts of Norfolk saw it prowling about their farm. Carl Moore and Joseph Burley shot at the gorilla last winter, but bird shot had no effect. And with that, I'm going to close this episode up now. I just think this is fascinating, and if you were just to kind of dive into it yourself, you can find so many newspaper clippings. I'm going to be coming back into this with Ruben because the history that is here is crazy. Are some of these stories embellished? Oh, I don't doubt it whatsoever. But I do think that the attention to detail is what's really fascinating. All these people are calling it a gorilla or a wild man. The terminology is not necessarily there yet of, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or anything along those lines. But these people are calling what they see. They see a gorilla. They see this hairy ape man walking around, leaving these footprints, robbing. If you look in the context of a gorilla itself, they're very peaceful unless provoked. If they feel like their territory is being challenged, they'll come at you. But I can't logically feel and come to terms with the fact that a gorilla would come up so close to people's properties and be stealing rabbits and be doing all these different things. I think it would probably be keeping it to itself, residing in a cave, maybe. But all these traits that were kind of mentioned in this article just seem very much along the lines of the Sasquatch and what that does. Always kind of snooping around, seeing what the people are doing. I'm not confident, can't speak to the fact that necessarily a gorilla would do that. Gorillas are very private and very much keeping to themselves from what I've seen in documentaries and their mannerisms and everything like that. So for it to be scouring around a whole, community like this, trying to just kind of cause fear and spread around like that, it doesn't sit with me that it's a gorilla. But again, they're calling what they see and they're saying it's a gorilla because that's what they know. They don't know the actual terminology or something like this. It's unknown to them. So it's truly fascinating. And I can't wait to get back into this with Ruben. But that's all the time we got for today. So until next time, you can tune in to CryptidClues.ca. Find us on social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. And you can find us on Patreon. You get those ad-free exclusive episodes. And you can also send us an email, CryptidClues@gmail.com. So until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.